Hello! In this video we will start creating chat bottom. Let's go! Before we begin, I want to mention that in the previous video when we started to create chat top, I forgot to mention a few details. First of all, we need to add a few more class names, and it is going to be this h4 element. So let's put class name, and we're gonna put text disappear to prevent text from overflow if it is too long, and then we're gonna add the display flags and align items center to make sure that when we are on mobile devices, this icon and text are centered vertically. Alright? And also, one more detail, if we open the room info btn model, we used use context selector. So to make it work, we also need to wrap the element around memo. That's what we forgot to do. So let's put memo here at the bottom, and also let's import it from React. Now use context selector will work as expected. Alright, let's move on and let's start with chat bottom. Let's navigate to index.js inside the bottom folder, and here let's define our markup. So first of all, we're gonna put input group, and inside this input group we're gonna put the actual input with placeholder, write a new message here and 3 dots at the end. Next to this input we're gonna put a button element. So let's define input group dot button, and this button will have color blue and appearance primary. Inside this button group we're gonna put icon, and icon is going to be send. Alright, let's save it and let's see what do we have. So now we have this input and we have the button. So when we click on this button, the message will be sent. Alright, now let's define our functionality. So first of all, we need state. So let's create input and set input, and by default it will be set to an empty string. Then we need to specify onChange handler for onChange event for our input, and also we need to associate our input with the actual state. So let's define value. It is going to be input, and for onChange event we're gonna specify on input change handler. Let's define this on input change, and we can optimize it in advance with the use callback, because we have input state that changes frequently, and on input change will not have any dependency. So this onChange event gives us value as a first argument and event. So we need to get the actual value from here, and then we will call set input with value. And just to mention that because we use this input that comes from RSUD as a component, that's why we receive value as a first argument. In any other case, we will receive only the event object. Now we need to add functionality to our button to actually send the message. So that's why we're gonna specify a new function that we will name onSendClick. It is going to be our handler for onClick event on this button. So let's specify. So for onClick we will put onSendClick. And first of all, here we will do a simple check if our input, if our message is not empty. So we're gonna specify input.trim equals empty message. If it is the case, then we will simply exit this function. Next, we need to assemble the message, and in the future we will also have file messages. So for this we're gonna create a common function that will be called to assemble the message. So it will attach common properties to our message. So here at the top we're gonna create new function that we will name assemble message, and as an argument it will receive user profile and let's say chat ID. Okay, and then it will give us an object with the room ID, which is going to be chat ID. Then we will have author object, and here we will denormalize data. Before we continue, let me explain the structure that we will have. So if we open our database right now, we have rooms and profiles, and our data now is flat and really easy to manage. However, now we have rooms and we need to create messages. How can we approach this? We can obviously put messages inside this object. However, with real-time database, because we are limited in queries, we need to wisely decide on our structure. So with real-time database, it is really important to keep the structure as flat as possible. It means that ideally we don't want to create nested objects. So that's why we're gonna create another, let's say, root object that we will name messages, and inside we're gonna put our message data, and then to reference that this message belongs to this particular room, we're gonna specify room ID inside this message. And also we will denormalize data. Denormalizing means that we will copy and duplicate our data. This is to prevent performing multiple queries on our database when we need to display something. For example, chat message. With chat message, we also want to display user profile, name, avatar, and other things. So when we display message, if we don't duplicate data, we need to send a second request to our database and get the actual profile avatar. So to prevent performing multiple requests, we will duplicate it. So this is normal in NoSQL databases. Let's go. So for a sample message, for author, we're gonna put name, which is going to be profile.name. Then we're gonna put also UID, which is going to be profile UID. Then created at is going to be profile created at. And also we need to put conditional avatar. So if user don't have any avatar, we do not put it inside this object. For that, we're gonna put 3 dots. Then we're gonna put profile.avatar, and we're gonna ask if it exists, then we're gonna put avatar key with profile.avatar. So otherwise we will put an empty object. So when profile avatar exists, we're gonna specify this object, and because of 3 dots, we're gonna spread this object to this global object. So in this way it will attach this property to this object. Otherwise we will spread the empty object, which will add nothing. Okay, so next to author, we're gonna add created at, and here we're gonna specify Firebase, but let's import it in the first place. Let me put import Firebase from Firebase app, and it is going to be Firebase database server value timestamp. All right, now let's use this assemble message and let's put it over here. So we're gonna create a new variable that we will name message data. Then we're gonna call assemble message with profile and chat ID. So we're gonna get profile from our context. So let's put profile from use profile hook that we have from profile context, use profile, and also we need to get chat ID, and we can get it with the help of use params. That comes from React router, use params. Alright, good. Now to this message data, we need to attach the actual message text. So here, let's specify message data text is going to be our input. Alright, and now the thing is that we need to perform an atomic operation to update data in multiple places inside database. With real-time database, it is really easy to do, and I really love that way. So what we will do, we will create a new message inside messages path, and also we will update rooms, and here we're gonna put another prop that we will name last message. This is to display last message here inside this chat room list. All right, so what we're going to do, we're gonna create a new object. It will be an empty object by default, which is going to be updates. And the logic will be the next. Inside this object, we model our update data inside database relatively to the root of the database. So we will have the update pass as a key, and for this key we will have the actual updated data. And then we will call this updates to the root of the database, and it will perform it as an atomic operation. I really like that way. So what I mean is that first we need to define a new message ID in advance. So for that, let's create new variable message ID. Here we're gonna put database. This time it will be database that comes from, let me again auto import it. All right, it doesn't work. Let's do it manually. So we're gonna import database from MISC. All right, let's go back to folders. Okay, one more level, MISC Firebase. All right, perfect. So database, then we're gonna need to specify reference to our messages. then we're gonna put push, and then we will get key. This way we can get a new unique key from real-time database without creating the actual document. Okay, now we need to update this updates object. So let's put updates, and our first property is going to be messages. Then we're gonna specify message ID over here, and for this message ID we're gonna specify message data. Then second object is going to be rooms / chat ID and / last message. And for last message we're gonna specify all of our message data, and also on top of it we're gonna attach message ID. So message ID is going to be message ID, like this. Now we need to update the actual database. So here we're gonna put try catch block, and here we're gonna call await, and let's convert this function to a sync function. We're gonna call our database.ref, so we get reference to the root of our database without specifying the path. Then we're just gonna call update, and we're gonna pass our updates object, and it will pick all update paths from keys, and it will update these paths inside the database. Alright, after our data is updated, we're gonna call set input to an empty string again, and also we're gonna put alert.error, and we're gonna specify error.message. Okay, and also maybe let's define a loading state. So next to this input, let's create is loading and set is loading, which will be set to false by default. Then we're gonna call set is loading right before we do any asynchronous task. In case if we failed, we're gonna call it as set to false, and when we are finished also we're gonna call false. Now let's use this loading state for this button. So let's put disabled only when our data is loading. Alright, now maybe let's save and let's take a look. What do we have? So if I send any message to the database, I have permission denied. And that's because we didn't specify any security rules. Let's navigate to rules, and then let's just copy all of that. Let's paste it here at the bottom. Let's rename it to messages, and let's specify message ID. Let's save it, and let's synchronize it with our local rules. And now let's try and send a new message. So if I click, now let's open our database, and here I can see a new path, which is messages. I have newly generated key, which is actually this message ID that we created with this line of code. If we open it, here we have created add belongs to this room ID, text, author is the next person, add inside rooms. If we open, now we also have last message, which is this message that we sent. So it looks just fine. The only thing I want to do here is actually I want to maybe add a new handler for on key down event. So when we also click on enter button, the message is being sent. So for this input, let's also put on key down event, and we're gonna specify on key down handler. Let's put it next to on input change, and this on key down is going to be, or maybe let's put it here at the bottom next to on send click. Inside on key down we will receive an event object this time, and we're gonna ask if event key code equals 13 if our button that we press is enter. Then we first gonna call event prevent default to prevent any default functionality defined for this button. Then we're gonna call on send click. Alright, now let's try one more time. If I say hello again, if I click enter, alright, message has been sent and the database has been updated. So I guess that's it. Let's finish this video. Let's commit all of our changes by calling git add everything, then git commit, and let's specify created chat bottom, send messages to the chat. Splendid! See you in the next one.